See, I'm live on mine, and you're live on yours. We have a duality of liveness now. I might have to WhatsApp this to you because that's just the way it's got to be. Or I can email it to you. Yeah, I'm live now without you. This is really weird. Okay, I'm out. Peace. Okay, let's see here. Getting this bad boy going. What is up, everyone? What is up? Okay, so we are live. I am here now, waiting on my esteemed colleague, the one, the only Benson Samuel III. So as soon as he hops on, we'll get going. I know it's a terrible way to start a show, but it is what it is. It is what it is. There he is. There he is. There's Benson. We're here. We're ready. We're raring to go. There it is. Let's fire the music up, baby. Let's go. Let's go. He's here. The man. We're on LinkedIn. Just press the button, baby. Just press the button. That's all you gotta do. Just press the button. Yeah, I did it. I pressed the button.
I really hope you're not live on LinkedIn right now. I really hope that I go to the profile and it's not there. That would be
that'd be
fantastic amount of justice.
Terrible. That would be terrible.
It would be fantastic.
That would be don't at me if it is.
All right, so now that we've wasted 10 minutes talking about just LinkedIn, do we want to start the show or
it's live on LinkedIn? It's live on LinkedIn.
Do we
live on LinkedIn? Are you going to share the link to everyone on your LinkedIn so they know where the real LinkedIn's at?
I'm gonna wait until we're when we're on the show. You keep talking about LinkedIn, and then when you're ready to talk about something else, I'll come back.
Well, I'm trying to stall for a second here.
So the truth comes out, folks. Thank you. I thank you. That was what I was looking for. So I think that we're talking about some pretty big things today. This has been an interesting start to the episode, but that's probably par for the course these days.
It's been an interesting start because you couldn't handle the ones and twos. Let's just call it the spade a spade. Hey, you know what I'm going to do, Ben? I'm going to throw up the chat overlay right there. It's right there. So, wait, it's right over there. So feel free to drop in here on the chats. We're live. This is not a pre-recorded restream like Ben does for all of his other shows. This is the real deal, Holyfield. Let's go. Let's go. Listen, you called me Lloyd Christmas 5 minutes ago, okay? You called me Lloyd Christmas. The amount of aggression that brought up out of my soul, I can't contain that, okay?
I can tell, by the way. It's a little, yeah.
You started
I can
this.
tell.
How's your day going, bud?
Right now, or like as of 20 minutes ago?
Cumulatively speaking.
You ever feel like you have like a work wife or a work husband that just makes your life a lot more stressful than it needs to be? You probably don't have that problem.
No, I don't.
No,
I don't.
It's going well. All good. It's I can't believe we're in the last month of the year. I mean, we're firmly in year-end mode at this point. I'm excited for next year. I know you and I off air have talked about a number of different businesses, some of which we have some good ideas on, some of which we have no business starting whatsoever. But I think 2022 is going to be a good year. I'm looking forward to making some money with you, which will be different than most years.
All years, actually.
Well, also, yes. Is it beanie weather in Dallas or in wherever you are in Granbury, Texas these days? Is
wherever I am.
Is that wherever you are?
This is Lloyd Christmas prevention weather. I hate you so much. I don't even know if
I'd like to point out that earlier today, before I said the Lloyd Christmas reference, like hours ago, you said you hated me about something else. So this seems to be compounding like on itself. Are we sure we want to make the announcement that we were like ostensibly going to make today? Like, are we sure?
What's the announcement? I don't even know what the announcement is.
I don't know. I mean, we had talked about. I don't know. What am I talking about? I'm not.
Okay,
sure.
we're talking about am I running for office? That's the question, right? That's the question.
I think so.
That is it. So
for folks that are not as cool as some that may not be in the zeitgeist, Ryan is contemplating running for state senate in Texas, or what do you say, potentate of the world Was that was that
Yeah,
that option B?
potentate's really where I want to be, but whatever. It's a whole thing. So I don't know. What do you think, Ben? We've talked about this a lot off air. Let's bring it on air. What do you think?
One of the things I said to you earlier today, and I think is incredibly true, is that I think someone that sort of looks at the world the way that you do, and someone that has the sort of the center that you do in the sense of the way that you approach things, and the think the sort of the genuine disgust of the establishment at current is.
I thought you were going to say the genuineness of you. I thought you were going to be like a nice person, like a real person.
No. Why would I say that?
I thought that was a fastball coming. I was like, wow, a nice thing. To have the slider, buckled the knees, way behind it. That was ugly. Yes, go ahead.
It happens. Happens to the best of us. You got to be watching out. Listen, you got to be watching, ready for, sitting dead red, but ready for the breaking ball. I mean, like that's the deal.
That's true.
No, but your genuine disgust of the establishment and sort of the status quo, I think, is what people are looking for in a representative these days. And I think that I think that going into 2016, I think there were a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that were really pissed off and didn't like what was happening and didn't really know how to react to that. And we've seen sort of that cycle continue to get worse and worse, in the sense that I think now there's a general consensus to a degree across the political aisle to some degree, again, in the constituency, just looking for new blood and someone that looks at things differently. And I think you certainly bring that. And so
along with a lot of other baggage, but we're not gonna go there today. That's for the media to discover, right? That's their job.
I mean, look, everybody has skeletons. It's just a matter of how skilled you are at burying them. Is that? I mean, no.
They're buried. Just don't know if they're deep enough.
Well, look, listen. As long as they're not in Florida, where if the water rises, there's stuff there. I mean, the stuff, like this.
Yeah. The stuff.
Is that the stuff? Is that the stuff we've been talking about? That's not the stuff.
Potentially. So I go back and forth on this, man. I really do. So I've talked to you, obviously, extensively, my wife, and some other people. And I go back and forth because when I think about, you talk about the genuine disgust, when I think about having to go and sit there at a fundraiser with potentially another political who I do not like and despise vehemently, and pretend like I'm excited to be working with the person on policy issues, like that's tough. I don't mind a business relationship because it's very transactional, right? And so I'm here to make money. That's very clear. I'm here. But when you get into the policy arena, that's where it gets tough, because if you play the game, then you have to be around people who you vehemently despise. If you don't play the game, can you win? And that's where because not only can you win, but can you win and actually be effective? So there's two thoughts there. So let's say that I did win, which is an uphill battle. But let's say I did win. Would that then allow me to pass bills through the House or through the Senate in this case, that would support my agenda, or would it alienate me to where I would be ineffective? And that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think just sort of organically, the freshman senators probably don't have much clout, right? I mean, that's sort of definitional, but and you see, the longer people are in office and the more sort of entrenched their office becomes, that can be a large part of the equation in terms of how much clout you have, and but I think that I think I look at it in a different way, in the sense that in the perspective of right versus left, conservative versus Democrat, especially in Texas, those voices are pretty well entrenched, right? Like if you're on the GOP side, or if you're on the Democratic side of any of the topical issues that have been banting around Texas for quite some time, there's not a ton of waffling. And so with somebody like yourself, who, like I said, sort of comes at it from I don't know, I necessarily align with either side in terms of axiomatic. I mean, obviously we're talking about well, actually, did we talk about which party affiliation you'd be running under? I guess we didn't really tease that out, but I mean that's the other piece of sort of where you're where the entry point is, what the plan of attack is.
Well, and that kind of goes back to the other point, which is that if I do go, that I could go into a third party or independent, um, very low chance of winning. So then you have to align yourself with the party who you may have qualms with presently or especially down the road. And so that's the other thing. And so then you're not permanently, but for a while at least aligned with those guys or gals or whatever. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things to where going through this, thinking about it, the conversations that you and I've had, it makes you really question, what type of a person runs for this position.
So I think that's
Right?
one of
I
the
mean,
really complicated. Yeah, no, I think that's one of the complicated things, and I think very it's very regional in the sense that I think there are certain places where you can kind of be bifurcated from this to a degree. But one of the things, going back to one of the articles that I wrote for War Room. I mean, I know I only did like two. You cut me off. You told me I wasn't allowed to write anymore or something. I don't know. But one of the articles I wrote was about term limits, and one of the things I was talking about in there was I just totally lost my train of thought. That dig through me.
term limits, war room. You wrote something is a masterpiece.
Yeah, no,
Like,
it was about what what you just said. I was
what type of person runs for these positions?
Oh yeah, no, thank you. So I wrote about sort of that I think that by and large, in order to even have the interest in running for Congress, now obviously it's a much different position, but in order to run for Congress, you sort of have to be a narcissistic sociopath to a degree. I mean, I think that's not a commentary on, well, that's purely a commentary on the people that you see that are successful at that position.
Mhm,
Think about the kind of person it takes to do that, right?
mhm,
And so that doesn't mean that all politicians are that. That just means that the people. Let me say it this way: if you are that person, you very likely may run for Congress because you understand sort of what that roadmap is, and so that it's sort of Congress is sort of a cesspool for that because it attracts that type of power dynamic seeking person. I don't think that that's the case though at the state level, and it's certainly wildly different. Like Texas is this is a dumb comment, but like Texas is wildly different than if you were to do this in like Arkansas or Alaska or just another state. And I'm not talking about politically. I just mean in terms of the amount of cachet and clout that Texas has sort of on the
mhm.
national stage. Even if you're a state senator, you're it's not just it's a lot more impactful than if you're a state senator in South Dakota.
Right. So this gets back to the crux of it, though, right? Is that you think about the path to win, and in my district, particularly, it's an incumbent you have to take down, and then if you win that, if you run as in my district, if you run as a Republican and you take down the incumbent Republican, you win. I mean, you could lose, but it's a long shot.
Mhm.
So winning the primary as a Republican would be the thing. If you ran as a third party, you'd have to hope to move a bunch of people that are voting party lines already, and that seems highly unlikely. It seems you have a better shot of winning the Republican primary than you do as running as a third party and winning.
What percentage of the Texas voter population do you think votes straight ticket? Either side, but just votes straight ticket.
Oh, what, 90% probably?
Really?
You don't think it's that high?
Wow. I
So you gotta
hope
think about
not.
like this. Okay, think about the elections from this standpoint. If you're voting for an election like the midterms last time, you had Ted Cruz and Beto at the top, right? That was a big race. And at the
Hmm.
bottom, you have some regional school district. Okay,
Hmm.
you're gonna unless you're really involved in local politics, the higher the ballot is, the more you're actually gonna feel like you know the person, even though you don't. And
Right.
so the further you go down, the more you're likely to vote straight ticket because you don't know the guy in seat 3 of school district B that you don't really follow, but he's a Republican, so or he's a Democrat or whatever, so you vote straight ticket. I think it's pretty high, right?
That's interesting. It's a good point. I never really thought. I guess I haven't thought about it through those terms. I mean, when I asked the question, I was thinking the number was likely much closer to 50%.
I would
But
submit to you that of the 20% that aren't voting straight ticket, a lot of them are just voting so they don't vote straight ticket. Like 80% of that's just so they say that they didn't vote straight ticket. Think about the
Gotcha.
amount of races on a ballot and how many you had to follow to actually know who the right candidate is.
That's fair.
So you have to be in this case, you would need to be top of ballot, and third party to have a shot. If you're low ballot, mid third party, you're going to struggle because each one is closer to being party line.
So when you were thinking about this, or when the idea sort of initially came up, or now, I mean, what are some of the reasons that you want to run? What are some of the things that you're thinking about that that you can do?
Well, it's kind of two things, right? So some people have asked me if I was going to run. And I've kind of teased about before, but I've had some serious people who have said, "Hey, you should run." So that makes you think, okay, it gives you pause, like maybe I should run. But aside from that, there are things that are coming, like as we've seen the attack on crypto. I think that's something that Texas needs to stop and think seriously. How do we protect ourselves from the federal government's overreach in the crypto market? It's not when; it's just a matter of if. Okay, and so if you have a bunch of senators who are, behind the times, if you will, they're not going to protect us like we need to be protected. Obviously, I think we disagree on this, but I'm a big advocate of eliminating the property tax. So I'd be pushing for that as well. So those are two issues that I think are important. And I think the property tax issue really doesn't get the attention it should. I think what Huffins or whoever it is running, he's talking about that some. Um, but after last year, I think we should all reevaluate, you know, property, individual liberty, rights, stuff like that. And so reacquiring our land from the state, I think it should be top of mind for all Texans.
What have I said about property taxes?
I thought you were in favor of them. Have you confused with someone else? I'm for eliminating them.
I,
I thought you were
I'm
in favor.
not sure we've ever talked about it, to be honest with you. I'm not. I'm certainly not against them. I think in a lot of areas it's way too much. But I mean, I think that if you look at the amount of, if you look at the country, and if you were to look at the balance sheet of a large swath of the country, if you were to take away property taxes, the government would be. I mean, that's the main revenue driver. So, I mean, I guess it comes back to, if we are, what are we looking at? I can't see it. There's too much
Well,
glare.
my wife says, "Hey, trouble and more trouble." I'm not sure which is which, but okay.
Well, I know exactly which is which. Did we tell the story on air about how you told me, like, one weekend you were like logging off and done, and then I called you and you answered the phone in the car with Haley? Did we talk about that on air, or was that
You,
supposed to be
you didn't
last
call
week?
me, I called you, but whatever. Um,
That makes it even worse. But you're right. Thank you.
yes, thank you,
Yes, I
thank
was
you.
trying to help you,
Back,
but I
back
mean,
to back to
whatever.
property taxes. I'm trying to run
Yeah.
the
So,
side of right here.
you I mean, if you have if we're looking at the system in the sense that, listen, like, whatever the government is coming, is bringing in cash flow, isn't going to be a drop in the bucket in terms of what they owe, and so it doesn't really matter, and let's just like remove the line item because it doesn't matter. Like, if that's the thesis, then like I guess, but it is a pretty substantive. I mean, it's a number that is, especially in large markets, is. I don't see this. I mean, I don't see a fair way to just removing those dollars from the budget.
Who owns the property? To me, that's a simple question. Does the state own it or do you own it? If the state owns it, then tax it. If they don't own it, then you can't tax it perpetually.
I would submit to you that you own the property and you own the land that it sits on, but by happenstance, that said land sits within the greater borders of the United States of America. That the federal government they are the ultimate owner of that at the end of the
So they own
day.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then pay taxes.
Right.
I mean, no,
I
I
mean,
don't agree. I know, I agree but I agree that that's what your stance is. I'm saying I think that should not be the way we look at
Oh, I
ownership.
don't. Oh, I don't think that. No. Okay. Me telling you how it is. Me telling you how I think it should
Oh,
be.
that's how.
Are
Oh, yeah, that's how
clearly
it
two
is.
different
Yes,
things.
yes,
How it
that's how it
is,
is. I'm saying that we should remove that.
So I think the complication with that. So I think the complication with that is that if you remove the property tax, and if this is the world that you're painting, or if this is the worldview that you're painting, I'd love to hear more about it. So I think my pushback there is that what that connotes is, okay, so now is the federal government, do they have an army, or is that now like you've got to pick up an AK-47 to protect yourself from everything? Is there a police force? Is there fire? Are there the things that the government does provide available, or since you don't want them to have any involvement, is it just everybody's for themselves? Because I don't know about you, but I would hate to see a world where like you have to pay an ambulance to like come get you like at the time, like hey, like pay us before we get in the car. So where does that line draw of what the government provides versus? So because I guess what I'm saying is, if you're painting a context where the populace doesn't need to pay into any of the systems that the government provides, I don't know how you get there. Or is this just like? But we've talked about a number of sort of tax buckets that you've sort of had the same realm. So I'm clearly making leaps here. But where's your thought in terms of where's that intersection between taxpayer money and services rendered?
Well, yeah. Well, so you asked, I think the question there is a funny question, but so, and these are just questions to consider, which is, if you have a property tax, let's just stay on property tax for a second. Should property owners be the only one that are allowed to vote on that? And if the answer, and so you can see the problem, because if the answer is no, then a city like, maybe Fort Worth or Dallas, I don't know the numbers there, but we have huge apartment complexes, and you might have a ratio of property owner versus non-property owner that's pretty close. The non-property owners can sway the tax on the property owner, right? So when you talk about how the funds are distributed, there's other questions that are at play here. And so how do you, those are things that I'm a little concerned that kind of get left. Is how you want to fund this stuff is one thing, but when you have taxes that only tax a certain percentage of the population, and another percentage of the population can disproportionately impact that percentage, that's a little bit of a concern. And so that would be that. Now, as far as the tax itself goes, should you raise? So if you got, so here's the problem: if you get rid of the property tax, you have to raise the sales tax or create a income tax, right? Assuming, or you slash the budget, which they're never going to do. And so then you disproportionately impact potentially the lower income people. And so you no matter where you go, that's the problem. And so I think, obviously, cutting government spending is critical, but that's not going to happen. So how do you reallocate those dollars? I don't know, but why? So real quick, maybe this point: if you make $1 million in cash, okay, okay, you made $1 million. We all know you made $1 million. Okay, the government coming out and assessing your property independently and then taxing you based upon that is a little bit concerning. Like that's let's be honest here. Appraisals and assessments are somewhat arbitrary, and especially if you have raw land that you bought a ranch to. That's kind of gets arbitrary. So they get to determine what your tax rate is. Of course, you can appeal it, but still, you start this loop where they're saying the rules, they're enforcing the rules, and then they're determining the tax rate on their own standard. That's not good for society.
I think that's a great point. Absolutely. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think part of what I think through is going back to something you said, a few minutes ago, when you think about, the property taxes, obviously the larger the property, the more expensive the property, the bigger the property tax bill. Is that, I struggle with this notion of, I understand that, because someone is more wealthy, that doesn't necessarily mean that they should be burdened with carrying the load of the people that, have no interest in being functioning members of society, and et cetera. And, that there's this feeling of, oh, I earned it, so it's mine. And I get that. And that's very individualist, and it's very American. And I think that's great in a lot of realms. If we're talking about, okay, so because the property tax, just to put a number on it, and I think it ranges obviously across the country pretty wildly, but let's pretend that it's somewhere between 2 to 5% annually of property value. And that money, if given the caveat, because one of the things I think you and I sort of break down on these kind of conversations sometimes is that, I'm not postulating that the government money will be spent well. I'm not postulating that the government knows how to spend the money. What I am postulating is that if the property tax bill is not paid, the private investor, the portfolio owner will not of their own volition, pay the Social Security and the welfare for the downtrodden, because it's not in front of them. That's not their job. That they're not going to do that. And so if the wealthy in this country have an opportunity, or shouldn't say have an opportunity, have a duty, the duty to pay a couple of points a year extra. Again, if those funds are funneled back into the public good in a good manner, which is the utopian claim to a degree, but I think it's important because I'm not claiming that the current system works, but I'm also very firmly claiming that if we remove it, if the answer to, hey, this isn't effective because it's not being spent well, is remove it, I don't think that's going the right direction.
Right. So for me, the property tax is about ownership more than anything else. So right. So and I know I hear what you're saying, but to me, it's about, do you have ownership of your property or not? And let's get real here for a second.
But
You
but
can
you
get
but you don't even have the guise of ownership over your property. Anytime the government decides that they want to come onto your property, if they think they've got a good enough reason, they will do it.
See, that's not true. That's what I'm getting at. As you know, and because of some off-the-record conversations, there is a position that I'm up for that would grant me the ability to restrict the access of people like that if I am awarded this position. And so we're not gonna
But
say anything
that's
more than that, but let's tease it out for a second. Here's a situation in which the government then grants me the ability, through a business network relationship with a foreign nation to stop that. So, like, think about
but
that.
but I think that's a really important distinction, because you are now being governed by a different set of laws. The American government no longer has this, like, you are physically in the same place, but you are not the same person in that context.
I know, think about that. Only because I'm trying to help trade with the foreign nation for no other
Okay.
reason.
Yeah.
Now I don't know this answer. How do the Indian reservations work? Are they kind of like more of a sovereign state that you can't go on unless you get permission?
Hmm.
Right. So it's not that this idea is that I'm espousing is un-American.
No,
We have
not at
it.
all.
We have it, right? It's just that we don't have it for the masses.
No, I think it's the exact opposite. I think the point that you're making is a great one, in the sense that I think it is foundational to America. The only point I was making is that we currently, that's not the system we have, and that
No, I agree.
that's right. But no, but in terms of property ownership, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think the founding fathers had really designs on the federal. Well, I mean, certainly you had the federal government having this amount of entrenched power in the system. I mean, that was never supposed to be the
And that
case.
would be the other thing, is that, so when you think about the property deal also goes to sovereign protection for the individual.
Hmm.
Right, and so that's one thing that I would be advocating for if I were in, which would be Texas trying to figure out where we're drawing the lines, and we're no longer, and we've seen this happen already at some with some of the vaccine mandates and stuff like this. But this is the debate that's going to be had. Which states are essentially federal government 2.0, and which states are actually individual states, and that's just a factual thing we're gonna see. Now, we might find out that all the states end up being federal government 2.0 because they like that money printing. I don't know. But the question fundamentally is to be asked. And so if you think about this, okay, well, if you're going to say Texas wants to distance itself from the feds, well, then the landowner in this case should distance himself from the governor of Texas, or the Senate or the House. So because because this is where it gets interesting. Right now, where we sit at today, we have certain protections from the federals, certain protections from the locals, certain protections from the state. And if you've watched over the last 2 years, what we've learned is no one really knows who has those protections and who's in charge. Okay, so if these lines are going to be drawn at the higher levels, they need to be drawn at the individual levels as well, which is why the protection of using cryptocurrencies should be given to the citizens of Texas, without the federal over. See, that's something like the bill, not the construction bill, what they call it, the
Infrastructure
big
bill.
bill. Yes, the infrastructure bill. they were going to require for Bitcoin mining, you had to turn it into the SEC and all this reporting and all this filing. Okay, Texas needs to come in and say, no, our citizens are not required to do that. And we don't really care what anybody says. And those are the types of stands that have to be made because that's protecting sovereign individual liberty. So those
and
are
we
the
started to see that. I mean, through Corona, we saw Abbott, we saw DeSantis. I forget the woman's name, but we saw the governor of what is it, Wyoming or South Dakota?
South Dakota.
South Dakota. We saw a number of states plant flags in that arena, and I think to varying degrees of success. But no, I think that's. I think you're right. I mean, I think that's sort of happening.
Right. So you hear Ted Cruz, and he was kind of ranting on, well, the Senate doesn't understand crypto, therefore we should stay out of it. And I'm not for new laws. For the sake of new laws, I think those are usually useless. But on something like crypto for the state of Texas, should we have laws that govern crypto? And by laws, I mean that govern it, mean that we can use it freely as we will. And these are big fundamental questions that a lot of people don't really think through what's at stake, right? Your ability to mine a Bitcoin is a fundamental freedom that you should really understand that if you're not allowed to do that, there is a lot of questions about why not. And I'll give you an example. In India the other day, there's a story about Elon Musk's satellite company. They're selling free service to India, and a story came out that said the government hasn't granted them a waiver or permit or whatever to sell internet to India. Now, stop and think about that. Why does the government of India need to sell you a license so you can sell internet into India? There is one reason. Because they want to be able to shut it off when they can. That's it. Now, there's some sub reasons about that they probably have, but the main reason is India wants to control when that switch is on and when that switch is off. And so we have to start thinking about liberty again and how that pertains to stuff. Now, to your point, the concern is that we ignore the downtrodden and the people who are down themselves. And I think a couple things here. One, part of that is because we have really disunified in this country. We really pushed against having a family, being involved with a local church or community group or whatever. And that's when people think kind of the libertarian mindset, they really think that that's what libertarians are pushing for. Maybe some of them are. I'm not pushing for that at all. I'm saying, how do we bring those groups back into this process? Because they're probably far more better. The local church down there on the corner is probably far better at understanding the homeless problem than some dude in Austin. And when I say probably, I mean he actually is, and it's not even close. And so, how do you incentivize those type of groups to be back involved? I think is a better question to ask.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I think we've talked about this before, to varying degrees of success, and I don't think we agree here. So I want to maybe we can talk about it a little bit. I think the problem that I see there is that, look, I mean, if corporations weren't intent on, well, I shouldn't say it that way. If we didn't live in a market where corporations were incentivized to do everything they possibly could to create as much profit and really slim down the value add offering and put customers in a position where, maybe that's not the best way to say that.
No.
Let me say it differently. Let me say it differently. So the fact that we live in such a litigious society in this country, you could make the claim that it's because of the people that, like, oh, you got burned by the hot fries at McDonald's, and that's ridiculous. I am much more in line with that. The reason we live in such a litigious society in this country is that the corporations are looking for every single way to cut corners and do everything they can to be in line with the rules and the laws and the regulations, but they have no interest in regulating themselves. If the government doesn't come into a lot of arenas and set up the guardrails, then it's the Wild West in a bad way. And so I hesitate to, and I'm not saying that the government, the government regulation is a good thing by any means. But I am saying, a deregulated market is not the answer. And so I'm curious how you think about that.
Okay. So a couple things here. One, let's start with, so I'm getting my real estate license right now. Okay. I can tell you without a doubt that 90% of this process is bogus. Probably 97%. I'm being nice. 90%. Like the questions that you have to. So you have to have. You have to go. If you do it online, which I did, you have to leave your class open for so long, so that you can say that you had the class for so long. That is only because people were passing it faster online than in person, and so in-person classes were probably losing business, right? So that's why that's there. There's no consumer protection there. Then the questions that they ask you, 90, I'm not kidding you, Ben, 90 to 95% of them are not relevant to you. Some of them are legal questions, which they tell you over and over and over again, you can't do legal questions. Some of them are how deeds and contracts work. You can't do any of that. Some of them are survey questions. You can't do surveying. Like all these things are only to keep. And so the only reason they're doing this is because they're trying to keep a stranglehold on A, the continuing education market, but B, the barrier of entry into this market, which it's not that high, it's just a pain in the butt. Okay, so I say a lot to say, then once you get your license, what do you have to do? Well, if you're not the MLS, you're basically screwed. And the MLS is ran by the National Association of Realtors. Okay, so that's another constraint that's on the market. And oh, by the way, to use the forms, the promulgated forms that Texas Society produces that allows you to do without getting sued, you have to be a realtor. So if you're not a realtor, then you have to pay a lawyer to draft you forms, which costs a lot of money. Yeah, right. So the whole system is set up to screw. Now, once you get your license, you're an agent, not a broker, which means you can't open your own shop. You got to go work for someone else. And then if you build up your agency, working for someone else, you can't hire people because they can't say certain things. And so you can, but it's a big pain. You're always looking at violations. All of that is because they hate humans. Let's make no bones about it. Okay. So when you say, big corporation goes out there in the Wild West and then they just dump toxins into the river for years. Okay. The problem, we agree that happens. There's no denying that. So what happens now? They dump the toxins. They all know about it. They pay a fine, a couple $1,000,000. Then they're brought in to help write the regulation that's so onerous that no one else can come in, and now they've locked it up. So they violate natural law to then keep out competition. So the problem isn't the corporation per se. The problem is that these people are not being held criminally liable, personally liable, and that's the issue. Is that there is no real repercussion that really hurts. If it really hurt, you'd have people that are scared to do stuff, but there is no protection. No one's really being protected, and there's some minor lawsuits, and there's a class action suit here or there, but at the end of the day, what?
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, you and I didn't agree at the time. Maybe you've come to your senses and changed your mind. Was that too aggressive? But when we talked about the airline bailouts during COVID, I mean, I think I said it on the podcast a number of times that I would have liked to see them been told, sorry, the well's dry, figure it out. And to your point, some entrepreneur or some group of entrepreneurs or some private equity shop would have come in and they would have bought Delta. They would have bought all the airlines up that needed to be right sized, and we'd have new ownership. And yeah, like, does that mean that a lot of people lose their jobs? And does that mean that hopefully there's people at the C-suite that are held criminally liable? Like, does it mean those things? Yes, but like, I don't know. Like, you can't have a world where United Airlines is getting a $10 billion bailout and then paying their CEO tens of millions of dollars in profit against with the counterbalance of like they shouldn't be in the market. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean,
Did I lose you?
sense. No, it makes sense. I mean, this is why the Bitcoin issue is so important, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, and this is, I don't know how to say this right. I'm just going to say it, and you can kind of poke at it. But most of the problems in the U.S., there's social problems that are one thing, but the unrest, the problems you're talking about, a lot of those come from the Fed and the endless amounts of money that's being printed. So no one has to play by the rules at a certain level. There are no rules for certain people at the certain level. During COVID, it wasn't just the bank. I mean, it wasn't just the airlines. All kinds of people got bailouts. Apple got a bailout at one point, or not a bailout. They bought some bonds. So all kinds of people got money from the Fed.
I mean, that's fundamentally different, right? I mean, the airlines and the cruise industry's got bailouts. I'm not talking about PPP money. I mean, I'm talking about actual, like, here's a windfall of cash because that wasn't PPP allocation. That was just like that was a separate bill. They got separate money. They got treated separately, which is my problem. If they had just been,
No,
if they
okay,
were
yeah,
just,
yeah, but Apple didn't get their hold on, hold on.
no, I'm sure
Yeah,
Apple did.
yeah, Apple got this is July 10th of
But
2020.
they got PPP money. They
No, no,
went
no, no, no.
through.
They're too big for PPP. Fed adds Apple, Anheuser-Busch, Expedia to its bond holdings. The Federal Reserve added 1.3 billion in
Oh,
bonds.
yeah.
Why do we need to be purchasing bonds from Apple?
Oh, it's the worst idea ever. I think that is like borderline treasonous. I mean, the fact that no, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. The fact that the American government is owning parts of publicly traded companies. I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. Talk about entrenched. Like talk about
That's what
like
I'm saying, though, right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so, so the problems are this is when I say the Fed causes so many problems. It's almost hard to imagine how many problems they're causing because their hands are in so much, and the
Yes.
trickle down influence of that is so wide. So when you talk about the Jamie Dimon comment, I thought was interesting, where he said that Chase would outlast the CCP. Okay, well, it's not Chase; it's the Federal Reserve. Without the Federal Reserve, Chase goes away tomorrow. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that people were like until he apologized because he's a loser,
Of
but
course.
that's neither here nor there. But it's funny that no one made that connection that when he said that, we should have all mocked him and said, "No, it's not Chase, it's the Fed. The Fed, you're saying the Fed's gonna outlast the CCP." Now that's an interesting question. We'll see. But it's not Chase Bank. But the larger thing here is that people you almost sound conspiratorial when you say the Fed controls everything. But they freaking do, man. All these wars that we keep fighting, you can only fight them because we have a Fed. Without a Fed, the war's in tomorrow.
It sounds like a really like minor thing, maybe it is to a degree, especially in context with some other things. But like I think that the fact that our Fed chair got up in front of America and for months talked about this garbage term of transitory
Mm.
inflation and then just decided one day, like, oh, we need to retire that term. That's not a thing anymore. We've moved on. Like it never was a thing. It was a political mouthpiece just at the time to quell fear. And anyone paying attention knew that. And so, but the fact that the people are able to do those sort of things, I think I think those are the things that he should be criminally liable for. I think that we should find a way to put that person, like, I mean, like it's just absolutely, because at the end of the day, those things, whether we like to admit it or not, what the Fed chair says
Oh, it moves the
about interest
market.
rates, I mean, it moves the
Yeah.
market, but it moves the global market
Yes.
because of where America is. I mean, it's a massive deal. And so, those sort of things cannot be treated this cavalierly. And I think they're just as important as some of the other things we're talking about.
When they say the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world, there's a strong debate that the Fed chair is.
That's interesting. So I wouldn't say it that way. I think the power certainly lies with POTUS, but I would say that the Fed chair has the ability to much more quickly affect the financial markets because
Well,
the president
if the
can
Fed
do a
chair,
lot of this, because the president can do a lot of this, and they there can be a lot of talk, but there's sometimes in order to act they have to, like, there's some hoops that they got to jump through.
Mhm.
The Fed chair can just
That's what I'm saying. So if the Fed wanted
basically
to come out
do.
and crash the global market tomorrow, they could raise the rates tomorrow and crash the whole thing. The president
Oh,
can't do
yes, yes, that's true.
Now the president could, like, bomb some country, but even then, you'd be doubtful the president could because the generals and all that stuff. So, obviously, there's a sense in which the president has more power, but the Fed's power is never ever talked about until like CNBC last year. I think it was they had a passing comment like, "Oh wow, I can't be saying that. That's kind of dangerous with all the power they hold." Like you'll hear these Freudian slips occasionally, but usually it's overplayed or I'm sorry, underplayed and overlooked. So, anyways, back to my candidacy, Ben. Am I running or not? What's the deal here? I go
You
back
see
and
that?
forth.
You see
I
that,
mean, seriously,
folks?
I go back and forth. I think about it. I'm like, I'm in. And then I talk to you, and I'm like, I'm really in. And I think I got to do it with you more often. I'm like, I can't be in. And I think about hanging out with the politicals. I'm like, there's no way I can do this. And so, where are we at?
So I don't know if you're asking me to give a real answer to that question or a fake answer to that question.
No, real answer, obviously.
No, I mean, some of the things that we talked about off air is what is sort of the time and attention allocation, and what are the fundraising mandates there. I mean, look, if Ryan Ray needs to go raise $100 million to go take down the incumbent, I mean, that might be complicated.
Kim
If you
Powell just
need,
cut me a check.
I mean, if you need to raise like $12, you could probably get that in a few months. And so
Just get Burger King next time.
if you just didn't go to Burger King for the next 6 months, you might be able to fundraise like the entire amount that you would need to win.
Wow. Wow, you fattest, you.
Well, no, that was just the frequency of Burger King. I mean, listen, if you chose some other equally fattening food, I think that's the problem. Real quick, Burger King aside, I think that's the problem with the take is that it's not at all a dig at fast food or not good food for you. Like if you had like, I'm sure there's other options. I mean, one of my guilty pleasures, and I say it that way because I think it's probably awful for you, but like I go to Panda Express probably much more often than I should. But I mean,
dude, I was so hungry, I crushed a Caniac yesterday.
Yes, that's
like we were, all what's going on, all these calls. My adrenaline was going crazy. I was just like firing all cylinders. I was like, Haley, bring me home a big boy. I didn't say what it was. Just bring home the big boy from Cane's. I didn't like Cane's that much. I crushed it. I mean, just destroyed that thing.
Did she redeem rewards to buy it? Was that too on the nose? Was that too much? Folks, if Ryan ever takes you out to Chick-fil-A, if he's offering to pay, he will pay because he's that kind of gentleman. But he won't. He's got like 50,000 million Chick-fil-A points sitting on the app that are ostensibly unusable because he doesn't know how to redeem them. It's pretty.
I have a wife. She knows how to use that stuff. I don't. Without my wife, without my wife, I would be a puddle of goo in the ditch. So
that's not a great campaign slogan. You may want to rework that.
Well, it's just factual. I mean, listen, I can't even run the Chick-fil-A app, okay? So I'll bring her on staff. We'll bring her on staff.
Okay, boomer.
So running or not, go ahead with my Lloyd haircut. You've got me like all jacked up now. The severe. Where are my glasses at? Let me just go all in here.
Look, I'll answer it this way. Now you just look like you're ready to like play online poker or something.
Oh, I hate you.
I know. And yet you're offering me a position on this venture.
Campaign manager. It's required. It offered, but whatever.
I was waiting for you to announce it. Like I said before, look, if anyone sort of from the upshot, that doesn't really, hasn't been in politics before, has an opportunity to get elected in a state like Texas, I think someone with your, like where you're sitting at and kind of what you're, the way you approach some of these issues that we talked about today and some other things, I think you have as strong a chance as anybody of getting elected. And so I want us to ride this thing out. But you've got to
Ben's in. Wow. Ben's in.
Let's go.
Wow.
Let's make it happen.
Especially with the conversation we had at about 12:55. 12:55 today. I thought you'd be out. Wow. Ben's in. A lot of pressure. Okay. So the question then is, I forgot. You caught me off guard. I thought you were going to say no, and you said yes. It's a lot of pressure.
I mean, keep your enemies close.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Okay. Why think you're campaign manager? Scooter Libby, but whatever.
Wow, that happened. Yep.
I've already got my letter written to Abbott to ask for your pardon, but whatever. Film and see.
It's not long enough. It's
a tweet.
You're gonna need to add to it. Trust me.
It's a tweet. It doesn't even tag him in it. It's like, hey, free Ben, whatever, something like that. Gosh, I had a good question for you. Oh, yeah. So, as campaign manager, how are you going to deal with supporting my policies that you might not deal with? Like, this is your interview here because this is tough.
Ryan,
or running on the fact that I'm an open guy willing to hear conversation.
That's
You can't even spin that, huh?
No, that was talking about out of left field. Give me a minute, people. I'll come back to you at the press conference next week with a better answer to that question, because I look like the woman, the energy secretary that didn't know how much oil we use in this country on a daily basis. Is that too soon?
Wow.
Wow. No, look, I think that someone like yourself has the ability to bring me into the aura that is Ryan Ray, and I can learn to have better opinions, and I can learn to parrot set opinions.
You can learn a lot, but that's neither here nor there. Whatever.
That's my answer to that question. That's
And the beautiful thing is, I will pay someone to get you radio spots to talk about me on the campaign. Like, that's what's gonna be beautiful. Like, hey, we want to talk to Ben. Ben, like, no, I talk to Ryan. Like, no. We want to hear from you, Ben, so that you have to go on like W106.2, to talk about me. Like, that alone might be worth me running.
I'll like forget every show. I'll like forget myself for a second and just like throw in a Source Rock Midstream or Alderon Ventures plug. But I mean, sure, I'm happy to do it. No problem. Happy to help.
So Ben's in. Ben says we should do it. I can't believe you put that pressure on me publicly like this. Wow. I thought you were going to soft out, and you're like, no, let's go.
This is a win-win for me now. I mean, I don't know,
Wow. Okay.
Should we leave it up to Twitter, or should we leave it up to Twitter or LinkedIn? Put up a poll. Should Ryan run?
Yeah, you should put that on your LinkedIn. Should Ryan run for state senate?
And I'm going to make 25 different profiles. Vote all yeses.
You'll know next week, people. I'm deciding tomorrow, so you'll know next week whether or not I'm running for the state senate of Texas.
What are current odds, or what are the current odds where we run the book here? What's the
last time we checked in on the percentage? I was at
96.3, I think.
We texted too much. 96.5. It went 96.3 and went up to 96.5. It dropped down, went back up. 97.2. 97.2 is where we're at right now.
97.2. I like it.
I like the music gets me going though, so that's part of that.
97.2 DLTS.
All right. Next week, or just check LinkedIn. Ben's gonna post a poll on his thing. Go vote there. Talk soon.